2008, BlackBerry was worth $75 billion. Its stock had just closed at an all-time high of $147.55 a share. More than half of every smartphone sold in America had a BlackBerry logo on it. Barack Obama refused to give his up, even after becoming President of the United States. 15 years later, the phones were gone. Discontinued, turned off, forever. This isn't a story about a bad product. It's a story about a company that built the perfect device for a world that was about to disappear and then refused to believe the new world was real. BlackBerry didn't start as a phone company. It started as two engineering students in Waterloo, Canada, tinkering with wireless data. Mike Lazaridis and Douglas Fragan founded Research in Motion in 1984, years before smartphone was even a word. Their early work wasn't glamorous LED display systems, local networks, wireless data terminals for other companies' hardware. The breakthrough came from a partnership most people have never heard of. In the late 1980s, the Canadian telecom company Rogers hired RIM to help build out a mobile messaging network. That project turned RIM into one of the first companies on Earth that actually understood how to move small amounts of data reliably over a wireless connection long before anyone was streaming video or browsing the web on a phone. By 1996, that expertise turned into a product, a two-way pager with a full keyboard. It looked nothing like a phone, but it did one thing better than anything else on the market. It pushed email straight to your hand, instantly, without you lifting a finger. That single feature became the foundation of an empire. RIM refined the formula obsessively. Its engineers figured out how to compress data efficiently enough. The BlackBerry devices worked reliably, even on the weak wireless networks of the early 2000s. While competitors' devices choked, the keyboard got better. The email got faster. The security got tighter, encrypted end-to-end, routed through RIM's own servers, good enough that governments and banks trusted it with classified information. Executives loved it because it made them reachable anywhere. IT departments loved it because it was secure and centrally controlled. And by the mid-2000s, that combination had made BlackBerry the default device of the professional world. By 2008, BlackBerry wasn't just a business tool, it was a cultural fixture. People called it the Crackberry, a nickname that stuck because it was accurate. Checking your BlackBerry under the table during a meeting became a universal office habit. The numbers backed up the myth. BlackBerry controlled over half the U.S. smartphone market and roughly 20% of the global market. The company was shipping more than 50 million devices a year. Its market capitalization peaked at around $75 billion. It wasn't just the corner office crowd anymore, either. The BlackBerry Pearl and Curve had pulled in a wave of everyday consumers who wanted BlackBerry Messenger as much as they wanted email. Fortune ranked RIM the fastest-growing company in the world in 2009, a full 2 years after the iPhone had already launched. That detail matters. BlackBerry didn't get blindsided immediately. For nearly 2 years after Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone, BlackBerry kept growing, kept adding subscribers, kept posting record numbers. Its own leadership looked at the iPhone launch and saw a toy, not a threat. Co-founder Mike Lazaridis reportedly dismissed the entire concept, arguing the cellular networks of the time simply weren't built to handle what Apple was proposing. On paper, he wasn't even wrong about the technical stressing. But he was wrong about where the industry was heading, and that mistake would define the next decade. The iPhone didn't beat BlackBerry by being more secure, more efficient, or better at email. It beat BlackBerry by redefining what a phone was for. BlackBerry had built its entire identity around one use case: fast, secure, physical keyboard-driven communication for professionals. The iPhone proposed something else entirely: a full computer in your pocket. Built around touch, apps, and media, aimed at consumers first. RIM's leadership treated this as a lesser priority. Internally, the company doubled down on the belief that its enterprise customers, banks, governments, corporations, would never trade physical keys and centralized IT control for a glass touchscreen with no keyboard at all. That belief blinded them to how fast consumer habits were shifting and how much influence consumers were about to have over enterprise purchasing. Employees started bringing their own iPhones to work and asking IT to support them. The device decision, which had always been made top-down by corporate IT departments, was quietly shifting into the hands of individual users. When RIM finally responded, in 2008, it was with the BlackBerry Storm, a rushed touchscreen phone, built to compete with the iPhone on the iPhone's terms. It shipped riddled with software bugs and a clumsy, clickable touchscreen that reviewers tore apart. It was RIM's first real attempt to prove it could adapt. Instead, it proved the opposite. Then came Android in 2008, spreading across dozens of manufacturers and price points, flooding the market with cheap, capable touchscreen alternatives. BlackBerry was now being squeezed from two directions at once. Apple above on experience, Android below on price and volume, and it had responded to the first threat with a broken product. The fall wasn't a single event. It was a slow bleed that leadership kept insisting was temporary. For a while, the numbers actually masked the danger. Subscriber counts kept climbing even as market share slipped, because BlackBerry was still adding new users in markets like the Middle East and parts of Asia, even as it lost the US and Western Europe. Global subscribers hit a peak of around 80 million in 2012, a number executives pointed to as proof the company was fine. It wasn't. It was riding on inertia. Meanwhile, the product missteps kept compounding. The 2010 Playbook tablet launched without native email or calendar apps, the exact features BlackBerry had built its reputation on, because the software wasn't finished in time. It was a public admission that the company could no longer execute at the standard that had made it dominant. In October 2011, a multi-day outage knocked out BlackBerry's email and messaging service across Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and eventually North America. For a brand whose entire value proposition was always reliable, always secure, a global multi-day blackout was catastrophic to the story it had spent a decade telling. By 2013, the company attempted a full reset with BlackBerry 10, a brand new operating system meant to compete directly with iOS and Android. It arrived roughly 6 years after the iPhone. The market had already moved on. Developers had already chosen their platforms. Consumers had already formed their habits. From there, the decline became structural rather than cyclical. Market share that had once touched 20% globally slid towards zero. By 2016, BlackBerry's share of the smartphone market had fallen to roughly 0.1%. In 2017, it hit a rounded zero. The company had already handed off its phone-making rights to a Chinese manufacturer and pivoted entirely toward enterprise security software. In January 2023, BlackBerry shut down the last of its classic device services for good, the final, quiet death of the product that once defined mobile business communication. One real-life lesson to learn from this video is, your greatest strength can become your blind spot. BlackBerry's security-first, enterprise-first identity is what built the empire. But it also convinced leadership that the rules of their industry were fixed, that customers who valued security and keyboards today would always value them the same way tomorrow. The very thing that made them dominant made them unable to imagine a different kind of winner. Early growth after a threat appears doesn't mean you're safe. BlackBerry kept growing for nearly 2 years after the iPhone launched. That growth gave leadership false confidence and covered up how badly they were misjudging the shift underway. Growth is not the same as direction. You can be gaining ground in a race that's already been redefined without you. A rushed, broken response to competition is often worse than no response at all. The BlackBerry storm was built to prove RIM could compete on touchscreens. Instead, its bugs and bad reviews proved the opposite, that the company was reacting out of panic, not vision. Speed without quality doesn't buy you time. It burns trust you'll need later. The people who decide what wins isn't always who you think. BlackBerry sold to corporate IT departments for 2 decades. It never anticipated that individual employees, armed with their own iPhones, would flip that power structure and start dictating the decision from the bottom up. Power over a market can shift to a completely different group of people. And you won't see it coming if you're only watching the customer you're used to. BlackBerry didn't lose because it built a bad product. It lost because it kept perfecting a product for a world that had already moved on and mistook its own confidence for evidence. Now I want to hear from you. If you had a BlackBerry back in the day, what do you actually remember about it? Was it the keyboard? The little red light blinking with a new email at 2 a.m.? BBM, tell me what life felt like using one before the iPhone changed everything. And again, if BlackBerry relaunched a phone tomorrow, would you actually buy one? Drop a yes or no in the comments and tell me why.